Hey guys, and welcome back to the Easier Said Than Done podcast. Today, I want to talk to you about the latest layoffs announced by Microsoft just a couple of days ago in Seattle, well, across their global workforce, because there is a lot of media spin around it, and I want to just help you understand what's actually going on. And I will walk you through my process of figuring out what's real and what's not, because we live in a world with a ton of spin and a lot of BS out there, a lot of marketing, a lot of poor journalism, a lot of sensationalist hype based reporting. And I will show you how that's done in most blogs. So, just as a little bit of context, Microsoft earlier this week announced that they're laying off about 3% of their workforce globally, which is approximately 6,000 employees. And the media is saying that software engineers and programmers were the most affected by these job cuts. Technically correct, but we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. Technically correct, but not by a long shot. Most of us read stuff like that, myself included.
Welcome to Easier Said Than Done with me, Zubin, where I share with you the tens of thousands of dollars worth of self-development that I did on my journey from 37-year-old lawyer to professional software engineer. The goal of this podcast is to show you how to actually do those things that are easier said than done.
And the media is saying that software engineers and programmers were the most affected by these job cuts. Technically correct, but we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. Technically correct, but not by a long shot. Most of us read stuff like that, myself included. We read most of as all or largely or substantially software engineers, right? But we'll go into that in a moment. The key point here is that despite the headlines focusing so much on AI replacing software engineers, the reality, and let me share the screen with you from the reports, the reality, as you can see from the screen share, is that it's actually 53%. So just to put that in context, 53% of people are in engineering-related roles, right? Software engineering-related roles, which means 47% are not software engineers. Effectively, that's half, right? Now, this 3% thing is like a rounding error. To me, it's half is software engineering, half is not software engineering. So who are these people, right? Who are these half that no one's talking about? Why are we all so obsessed about the impact on software engineers when half the layoffs, and if you remember in 22 or 23 or whenever it was, oh no, actually it was 23, 24, I think, when Google and the others were laying off tons of people, it said, oh, it's, mainly software engineers. From memory, I think I remember doing the research in that one. It was less than half of software engineers. That wasn't AI related. That was just post-pandemic downsizing because they'd overinflated their numbers during the pandemic. So, less than half of those were software engineers. This is how the news and media want to report it. And what is more scary than AI replacing a profession that is considered to be very hard, that is considered to be extremely difficult mentally and stuff like that, right? It is. Software engineering is hard. And, before that, I was a lawyer. That's hard too. Being a doctor is very hard. Heck, these days, being anything is very hard because it's really stressful to do any sort of work, right? So, why is it that all the emphasis is on software engineering and no one's talking about the 47%? I haven't seen any breakdown about who the other half is. Like, who are these people? What kind of work, right? Because the media loves to sensationalize stuff. That's the reality of this what's going on here, right? If 53% of people are laid off, make it the largest affected department. Now, when we read things like largest affected department, yeah, okay, 53% is technically mathematically the majority, but 47% is not a small amount, right? And that makes up everybody else, right? Now, in a company where most of the employees are software engineers, it is not surprising that when you cut it proportionately, most people will be software engineers. It's just math. It's not like there's something targeting software engineering specifically. It's just math. If 50% of the company is software engineers, and there's a 50% reduction in headcount, there's going to be a 50% software engineering hit, right? Like, it's just math. So it's not specific to software engineering. Now, of course, the media is going to say, well, it doesn't come as a huge surprise. Microsoft, Satya Nadella said, 30% of the company's code is now written by AI. Whether that's true or not, possibly true. But keep in mind, software engineering is not just about writing code. I've been saying this for years. It's not about writing code. But if this doesn't come as a huge surprise because Satya Nadella said this about 30% of the company's code now being written by AI, I'm going to say it came as a huge, huge surprise to the 47% who are like, hey, we don't write code. Why are we being let go of? This is the way I'm encouraging you guys to think, okay? If it's no surprise that 30% of the code is being written by AI, therefore, shouldn't all of these people have been software engineers? Why is half not software engineers, right? I'd say that's the huge big surprise, right? So this is how the media connects an other story with this story and makes it seem connected. Yes, a ton of code can be written by AI, right? A ton of copywriting can be done by AI. Ton of video. I use AI for video editing, right? It's going to affect all knowledge work. And that's my number one takeaway for you guys today. I want you to understand that this narrative that it's only software engineers that is at risk is very misleading. AI is fundamentally reshaping the landscape for any knowledge work, from project manager to sales to law to medicine to HR, creative roles, all of them are being affected. So don't get sucked in by this, oh my God, software engineering is risky. Any knowledge work today is risky. Hi, if you want a no BS insight into how to change your career, whether to code or something else, and how to actually get job opportunities in tech, then please subscribe and like. It's no BS because I have zero incentive to mislead you. I just want to help you and give you tons of value so that you will consider working with me to get to your next career. Take a look at the description text below to learn more about the training I offer. But I do post content here regularly, and by subscribing and liking and hitting that notification bell, you will get to know when I post new industry insights for you. You'll also know within about 3 seconds if you want to learn more, but at least you won't miss out. Oh, and please follow me on LinkedIn too. I pretty much post there every single day. Just look for my name, Zubin Pratap. All right, so please like and subscribe to this channel, and let's get back to the episode. This narrative that it's only software engineers that is at risk is very misleading. Oh my God, software engineering is risky. Any knowledge work today is risky. It is going to be changed by AI, but I have some good news for you in a little while, right? So don't think that software engineering is particularly risky. I would say software engineering is a little bit less risky than the average job because there are things you can do about it to improve your skills. Okay, there are sort of value niches you can generate for yourself to protect yourself. But let me be really clear, AI is going to reshape all knowledge work, not just software engineering, as you can see from this sort of rubbish kind of, the way they present this, right? Now, if you look at the actual full story, which is linked to in that one, that's this one, right? And it talks about the same thing. 6,000 workers, about 53%, is going to be software engineering roles, right? And this, again, they've connected it to the code. Makes no sense because if coding is what's being replaced by AI, why are 47% of the people who got laid off not coders, right? Here's what it really comes down to. It's trying to reduce redundancies while empowering employees to spend more time, right? And more meaningful work. I think that makes a little bit more sense, right? Because I see this at work, in how I work as well, is because of AI making me a lot faster. Since I know what I'm doing with the engineering, I can use AI to get a lot faster. I can get more work done. On the other hand, what happens to the smaller companies that aren't growing, where you don't need more work done? There are lots of companies, I worked in them in my past, where the growth is not so huge that you need a ton more work done. So what do you do in that situation? Yes, you will reduce the headcount because wages are the most expensive part of a company's profit and loss statement. For most companies, it's the single largest expense item, right? Labor. And so if your company is not growing a lot, and you don't need 10 people to do the job anymore because 3 people plus AI can do it, which is what efficiency means. That's what productivity is, right? More output of work for fewer units of input. Then that's why they're going to lay off people. It's because the company's not growing that much. They don't really need to produce more and more work and velocity out of their employees. All they need to do then is cut headcount a little bit, replace some with AI, and then have the humans manage the rest of that with AI and themselves because they're now able to be more productive. Like, it's just math when you think about it, right? And that's what it comes down to. Now, here's the good news, right? AI is now pretty mainstream, right? About 75% of global knowledge workers, and by the way, I'll link to this. This is a really great article. Interestingly, ironically, perhaps, it is also from Microsoft, right? It talks about how this is from 2024, though. As you can see, it's a whole year old, but nothing's changed in my view other than the numbers. The trend line is still very clear, right? So AI is used by 75% of knowledge workers. This was in 24, and it continues to be the way now, right? AI is helping workers manage workloads because the reality is, I think, whether you're in software engineering or any other profession today, work is kind of overwhelming, right? There's a pace, there's a volume, there's all these channels of chatter, there's email, there's Slack, there's this, there's that. It's kind of overwhelming, and people are feeling a little bit burnt out by that. In fact, if you look for the word burnt out here, you'd see, there you go. 68% of people are saying they're struggling with the pace of work, the volume of work. 6%. Again, that's almost half feel burnt out. Email overload. That's for those companies that use a lot of email. Other companies use things like Slack and Asana in addition to email, and that's a lot, right? Emails are read under 15 seconds. Typical person has read about 4 emails for every one they send. Like, it's huge amount of data and after hours work are holding steady at the post-pandemic highs, 60% of the time. And like, it's pretty serious stuff, right? It's pretty stiff. But AI is trying to help reduce all of this. So whether it's the tech industry or other industries, they're all undergoing transformations because of the arrival of AI, quite similar to the transformations that happened in the late 90s with the arrival of the internet. I was around for that one too. Yeah, I'm that old. Or before that, in the 80s with the arrival of the PC. I was a toddler at that time, right? So, business processes, the needs of departments are being redesigned. Heck, I remember a time when, in the law firms, you had pools of typists and stenographers who would do the typing because the, senior associates and partners, from the 70s and 80s and 90s weren't used to typing. They type with one finger, right? And now you don't really see a lot of that anymore because most people have now grown up with typing, as teenagers. And so they're fast typists. And so they don't need that. So there is reshuffling that happens anytime technology becomes mainstream, and AI is becoming mainstream. AI is definitely automating routine, repetitive tasks. It's helping us draft things. It's helping us check our email. It's helping us summarize documents. It's helping us put together the basic framework of plans that we then, so now that we have the structure, it's done some of the structured thinking for us. Now we just fill in the meat and potatoes into it. And so this work shift increases velocity. It's not just in engineering, it's across all knowledge work, right? A lot of AI agents, the more AI start to speak to each other and make independent decisions, they're able to do things like, note taking at meetings, automated expense reporting, sales lead generation, handling sales calls, right? With synthetic AI voices. All of this is now starting to happen. So all that means is across the board, AI is changing the way we work. But there are huge skills and opportunities. So if you look at, let me see if this word, yeah, here you go. So there is genuine talent shortage, right? This report finds genuine talent shortage. About 55% of leaders are concerned about how they're going to fill roles. And, as someone who's hiring, this continues to be on my mind as well. It's hard to find good candidates, especially good candidates for where you need to go. Because as a manager, I'm always thinking about where I need to be in 12 months, 24 months. I'm trying to skate to where the puck's going to be, not where it is right now. And that means I'm trying to anticipate what skills will I need in 12 months that I can start nurturing today. And, the reality is having AI skills helps. And now, what is AI skills? Don't get misled by all this. AI skills simply means, depending on your job, it quite simply comes down to, can you use AI to make yourself better and faster at your job compared to your competitor? Now, for some people, ChatGPT is enough, right? For people like me in software engineering, that's not going to be enough. We need to be able to use it in our development environments. We need to be able to use it in other ways, in our IDEs, in our terminals, etc. Right? So it really depends on your job. There are people who need to do a lot of Excel spreadsheets. They need to be good at the AI interfaces that do good Excel, help them with Excel, for example, right? So it's different. There are specific tools for different industries and domains. So AI aptitude is definitely becoming an important part of experience. Now, this report had something interesting. I think it was 70, I want to say 71%. Oh yeah, here we go, right? So 66% of leaders say they wouldn't hire someone without AI skills. Again, like I said, trying to think forward. 71% said they'd rather hire a less experienced candidate with AI skills than a more experienced candidate without them. Now, this is a tricky one because I think it would also depend on the domain and whether this person's an individual contributor or not. For example, executives are less likely to have full-on AI skills than someone more junior to them, simply because of the age and the time. So for them, in key strategic decision-making roles, I'm sure the experience counts more than their ability to do AI, because they'll simply get someone in their team to do that for them, right? We see this all the time in our work. The more experienced people may not be hands-on on the tools because they haven't gotten updated skills with the latest tools, but because they have all that depth of experience and their team has all these abilities with the tools, they're able to function really, really well, because the executives or the key decision makers' key skill is in judgment and decision making and managing the team and so on, right? And this is the big difference between being a leader or a manager and an individual contributor, in that hierarchy, so to speak. So that's why I guess junior candidates may have an edge. 77% of the leaders say, early in career talent will be given greater responsibilities. What that actually means is that, younger folks can get more done because of AI, and therefore they'll be given more greater responsibilities. I don't believe this is the full truth though, because from what I'm seeing, what's lacking, what's a real rarity these days with AI is actual critical thinking and judgment, right? And within 3 to 5 years into your career, you will need to have strong critical thinking and judgment skills. And if you're relying on the AI to do that for you, you're not building that muscle. So, I personally while maybe a lot of leaders say this, I believe that's a mistake. It's not how I would do things. I would want people who, if there was an electricity outage and they don't have access to the AI, they can still make decisions and know what to do and do the job manually if need be. Like that's what I'd be looking for. So, that's a sort of an overview of the skills and opportunities in this new career landscape. And I would encourage you guys to think about AI as a potential career accelerator, not just a threat. And it's not just about software engineering, whether you're in engineering or something else. If your job relies on a computer for at least 50% of your duties, such that if you didn't have a computer, you would be prevented from discharging your duties, from doing your job, then you're probably a knowledge worker. That's my definition, by the way. It's just my rule, right? If you're not able to be productive in your job unless you had a computer at least 50% of the time, then you're probably a knowledge worker. And I would say, rather than worrying about AI replacing your jobs, which it will in some senses, in the sense that it could replace part of your job, it's not likely to replace your career, though. And this is why I keep emphasizing with my students in the Inner Circle program, there's a huge difference between a job and a career, right? A job has certain functional definitions. You could do the same title in different companies, but the job may be slightly different. So jobs can be quite different, right? Your career, on the other hand, is a collection of your skills and your impact. And so that you can absolutely control about. That's what you really need to be thinking about, not a specific job. And you can use AI to significantly enhance your skills. Whether you want to be an engineer or something else, it doesn't matter. But even in engineering, there is a huge, huge appetite for people who can do less code but have more impact. And engineers are very well equipped to do that because personally, I subscribe to the school of thinking that engineers should be lazy. We should try and avoid writing code as much as we can. That's my personal philosophy as an engineer, right? We want to write the least amount of code as we can. If you can solve problems without code, that's better, as long as you solve the problem well, because code should only be used when it's the best solution available for a given problem. When it's not, we shouldn't do it because there's a lot of maintenance burden, there's a lot of effort, there's a lot of time, and it's an expensive resource and so on, right? So I would say companies are clearly trying to invest in upskilling employees. Many of them are giving them access to AI tools. Some people won't. Some companies won't. And the companies that do try and embrace AI will pull ahead simply because of the productivity boost that AI can do. But, apparently at the moment, I think it was, oh, here we go. It's right here. About 45% of US executives are not currently investing in AI tools. That's a pity, but I think that'll change. But, this happened when the PC was happening as well. This happened when websites were a thing. Initially many businesses and companies are like, why would we ever need a website? What's that going to do for us? This is in the mid 90s. I remember this, right? So, that's just kind of how it is. In terms of new hiring imperative, here are some graphs. Aptitude does take center stage. These are some of the statistics we talked about. 66% of leaders would not hire someone without some AI skills. It's unclear what AI skills are. So don't get too head up about this stuff. Don't leap into action about it. AI skills means very, very different things, right? For a software engineer, AI skills means something completely different. For an AI software engineer, AI skills means completely different things from a regular software engineer, and so on and so forth. It's an endless variety of what AI skills mean. So analyze it in the context of your career and your career goals, not just your job, your career. Remember, there's a big difference. Look, I think I want to leave you with this, right? Ultimately, when you look at articles like this, 53% of those who are laid off are software engineers, largest affected department, and it's because Satya Nadella says that 30% of the company's code is not written by AI. No, that's not what happened. Again, if it is all about the code, then shouldn't this be much higher than 53%? Shouldn't this be 90% laid off for engineers? No. Instead, almost half were not engineers, right? Like it's literally staring you in the face. What happened to that half? If they're not coders, why did they get laid off? Why did they get laid off? It's because it's not just code. That's just the sexy pizza that the media outlets want to focus on, because it's fun to talk about a complex profession that people seem to, put on a pedestal and say, even those guys are at risk. Like that makes great news, right? But it doesn't make for reality. The reality is all knowledge work is going to be affected. If you're a knowledge worker, you are going to be affected if you're not already. So you might as well get into the part of the world where you believe you're most future-proof. I personally believe having tech skills, whether you end up becoming a software engineer or not, doesn't really matter. Having those skills and that way of thinking will future-proof you, because not many people are going to do that, have those skills in addition to everything else. It's like there was a big time in human history, several hundred years, when only a small percentage of the population could read. They were literate. And those that were literate got really good opportunities for generation wealth for a long time. Now we take literacy for granted in much of the developed world, but it wasn't like that, and in many senses, being able to work with code, being able to understand or read a little bit of code, being able to understand a little bit of how computers are programmed, being able to use AI in a slightly more advanced way than your competition, these are all competitive advantages, right? These are all forms of literacy that sets you apart in the marketplace. And you've seen the data. It is of interest to the hiring side. So with that said, I just want to emphasize to you guys, don't go by everything the news says without being critical in your thinking. If 53% of people are software engineers, that means 47% of people that Microsoft laid off weren't software engineers, which means it can't just be because AI is writing the code, because that 47% of people weren't writing code. So then why did their jobs go, right? Simple critical thinking. All right, guys, hope you found some value in this. Links will be in the show notes. And if you are looking to transition into software engineering or building your own tech startup, or you just want to acquire engineering skills to future-proof yourself, reach out to us. Brian and I do the Inner Circle program. It's very small. It's kind of by invite because we also work full-time and we don't want to have a ton of students. We want to keep it really focused on a few so that we can get outstanding results. Links are in the show notes. Feel free to reach out. We're happy to help if we can. And if we can't, we won't pretend that we can either. All right. See you next time. Take care, guys. Bye.
Do it. Just subscribe. You know you got to do it.